If our self-esteem is in the media's hands, in bad coaches or bad teachers out there, or friends, peers that don't have our best interest, if I put my self-esteem in their hands, I am in serious trouble. So
Yes.
I have got to learn how to own my self-esteem and have it be from a place that doesn't change.
Welcome to Thrivist, where we share real stories, psychology, practical wisdom, and hope. We're here to inspire you with stories of overcoming and the lessons people learn along the way. We believe in humanity, and we know that we can all build resilience and thrive. Or at least low-key thrive at best.
Well, hello, Emily, and welcome to everybody who is joining us here on the Thrivist podcast. Today, we're doing something really exciting. We're kicking off our countdown of the 10 pillars of thriving. So, for those of you that may not know what the 10 pillars of thriving are, we have earlier episodes where we talk about that. I think it's episode 2 and 3, where we tell you what we think 10 pillars are for thriving in our world today. This episode is going to focus on just one. So we're not doing a total deep dive, but we are definitely going to be talking about pillar number 10. So Emily, you want to read that for our listeners so they can be refreshed in their memory?
Yes. So today you are in for a treat, everybody. We are talking about pillar 10, which is living from your core. Just as a strong physical core stabilizes the body and prevents injury, a strong internal core built on a healthy self-esteem and clear boundaries allows us to move through life with less emotional pain and relational damage. This pillar invites us to live from the inside out, letting our inner sense of worth and not external circumstances or others' opinions guide us. When we live from our core, we show up differently in every relationship and every room. Boom. Oh,
Boom.
yes.
That's
It's
right.
Pilates and more, AudrieAna.
That's right. Just for the insides.
Yes.
Right. So for those of you, we even in those first couple of episodes that we talked about these pillars, we've actually made them a little more robust. So what Emily was reading from is our official, 10 pillars document. So, keep your eyes out for when you can get that downloaded from us. I think there are ways you can follow us or subscribe and things like that so that you can have all 10 and you can have the wording there. But this one is a two-part series. So living from your core, Emily, we talked about really includes two things, so many, but we are highlighting two things, self-esteem and boundaries. And today we're going to talk about self-esteem.
Yes. And you were really the first person, AudrieAna, that ever shared with me this idea of having an internal core. Because, we've all done physical exercises, and by midlife, we learn the value of strengthening our physical core through
Mhm.
Pilates, through bar classes, spinning. We know this avoids accidents with balance as we age.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
yet, truly, what we are saying is that it actually helps us avoid accidents with other people, accidents with ourself when we live from with a healthy self-esteem,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then build off that to actually create boundaries. And so it's really one of those things that is kind of on a continuum through life as an adult, isn't it? It's not like we just get this self-esteem and it stays forever.
Right. Right. I think there's so much out there about self-esteem that it can kind of feel like it's just gray, that's not really
Yeah.
clear. The other thing is it's defined so many different ways. People have different definitions of it. Whether you're working with, a therapist, a coach, a pastor, you know, maybe even your football or soccer coach talk to
Yes.
you about self-esteem. Everyone's got their own definition. So I thought, since we are focusing on self-esteem right now, that I would just read some definitions
Yes.
that are out there that I think are helpful. The first one is from the Oxford Languages Dictionary, and it says that self-esteem is confidence in one's own worth or abilities or self-respect. Okay, so I think all of us can probably agree on that. Um, One of the studies that I have done has been with developmental and relational trauma, and that is based on the work of Pia Mellody. And Pia Mellody has a definition of self-esteem, and she says it is the ability to hold yourself in warm, positive regard despite your imperfections and your humanity. And I love that. I
I
love
do
that as a
too.
definition. This helps me so much personally and also with my work with clients. Um, and then I tweaked it a little bit for my own definition. So here's my definition, just because I like to have it reflect kind of maybe who I am. So this isn't
Yes.
the definition, but this one works for me.
Yes.
Um, and so I use the word belief instead of confidence. So I just say self-esteem is the active belief in one's worth and value. And I think that word active is what helps me because my self-esteem comes and goes sometimes.
Yes.
It's not static. It's not in one place, right? I can have an experience that causes me to sometimes doubt my worth. I can have an experience where I may actually try to hustle to earn my worth, and we're going to talk
Yes.
about that a little bit. So it is an active thing, and you use the word continuum. And when I'm working with clients, we definitely talk about this continuum that self-esteem, it does come and go, and we can all go through some hard things that sometimes our self-esteem takes a blow.
Yes, I love those definitions. Thank you for um, coining your own. And you're right, it is a belief. I love that. It can be something we stand on. A belief is such a strong word because it doesn't need to have emotions attached to it. It can just be, right? And
Hmm.
so it can be something we all are claiming that, yes, I believe I have inherent worth, regardless of XYZ today. And
Right.
we live differently. We do show up differently. And we certainly enjoy the ride more, and it reduces a lot of pressure on us and the threat of mental health conditions that we'll talk about as we go. But where have you found, AudrieAna, that healthy self-esteem really comes from? And then I'll share where I found it comes from.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Um, I really believe that it comes over your lifespan, but it starts in childhood. That in childhood, your parents, and we as parents, have the job to reflect to you, to the child, their worth and value. A child comes in kind of unharmed into the world, and then the world happens to the child. And children are looking to parents to tell them who they are during the early developmental years. And that
Yes.
completely changes in the teen years, right? But during the early years, kids know their worth and value because of the way a parent treats them, because of the way a parent talks to them. Um, and so that's where I think it begins. And then over the developmental years, all the way until old age, we're continuing to develop self-esteem. We're continuing to work on that because why? Because life keeps happening to us and our self-esteem continues to be challenged, right? But this idea that you have value just because you exist. That comes from our parents. And they either did a good job at conveying that or they did a bad job or somewhere in between. This is not about blaming parents, but during
Yes.
your developmental years, you need to know that you have worth.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. The way that our parents and our caregivers delighted in us by just being alive, right? You're not really doing anything, and you delight in an infant, a baby. And then as you grow through life, your parents, your caregivers, your key people are really reflecting back to you how they've experienced you and your
Mhm.
experiences in the world.
Mhm.
And then some of the achievements that you start having at a young age, the unique talents and gifts you have, and the setbacks that you have, and how those are seen and how those are overcome through life. I also think self-esteem comes once we're a teen and older through our own self-talk.
Mhm.
And, we all have a tape that is playing in our mind on a regular basis at a conscious level and an unconscious level
Right.
about who we are, how we're going through life. We're too much of this, not enough of this, right? And as
Mhm.
we do our own work, we illuminate those beliefs and thoughts we have about ourselves
Mhm.
that can keep us holding ourselves in that high regard, or
Right.
that can allow us to just be terribly critical on ourselves and defeat ourselves before we even put ourselves out there into the world. And so
Right.
thought life is a big part of that. And we help clients all the time to, illuminate more their thoughts, their belief system and the way they're seeing themselves.
Mhm.
And so that's something that, yeah, changes throughout life, right? Our
Right.
relationship with ourselves, our thoughts, and how we're internalizing who we are in this
Mhm.
world.
Yeah. And a lot of that thought life comes from what we were hearing when we were 2, 4, 6 years old, and then again in school, right? From people who, maybe bullies or a difficult teacher,
Yes.
things like that. And so that thought life gets stuck in our head. And so sometimes I'm working with someone on self-esteem and they might say, well, I'm just this, this, this. I'll say, well, when's the first time you had that thought? And we go all the way back and and assess and look at where that belief began because children are exposed to a lot, right?
Yes.
And they need a way to process all the things that they're hearing, but some things get through to a point where they actually believe the thing that was told to them, and or that they came about it with their own mind, but they didn't have someone to talk it through. And
Yes.
so this is where that word belief really makes a difference for me, and
Yes.
that this is an active belief. And then sometimes we have to unbelieve what we have told ourselves about ourselves, like you said,
Yes.
that
Yes.
self-talk.
Yes. And unlearning, and that's where we get into the neuroplasticity of our brains and being able to tell ourselves the truth and kind of rewire our automatic thinking that we
Mhm.
default to, which takes time, but does change as we take our thoughts captive and do the work in life for sure, which is fascinating that we can all be doing that on as we develop. Um, I think another place that self-esteem grows or really can diminish sometimes is how we see our mistakes. AudrieAna, we all make
Mhm.
mistakes.
Mhm.
And someone with healthy self-esteem today, whether they're forming it as a child or they're living as an adult, they make a mistake and they can say, okay, AudrieAna, I made a mistake. I've got to learn from this. When you're operating in an unhealthy self-esteem, it's like, okay, I made a mistake, AudrieAna. Uh, I really shouldn't be a mom, right? There's this like failure, there's an awfulizing. There
Mhm.
is a sense of really having, moving, not being able to accept my own humanity, that I make
Mhm.
mistakes, we all make mistakes, and I recover, we build resilience, and we learn. And so
Mhm.
I see that also as a part of how we navigate self-esteem and how healthy it stays for us is how we deal with our mistakes.
Yes, I 100% agree. I think that this is why you could be 40, 50, 60 and learn and improve and strengthen your self-esteem by looking at this. I think I love saying this, and I've said it so many times.
Yes.
Um, this quote of, you have value and worth just because you exist. There is nothing you can do to earn your value, and there is nothing you can do to lose your value, right? And if we believe that, if we truly believe that, we would handle our mistakes very, very differently, right?
Yes.
Very differently. Because I love to say I'm a self, I'm a perfectionist and a recovering perfectionist. And that perfectionism for me comes out of a lower self-esteem, or a self-esteem where I think I need to get it right in order to provide value to the world. And by right, it might not be, well, by right, by what anyone else says, by right, by what AudrieAna says. Like, I wanted to do it this way, and it didn't happen that way. And when I look back at my childhood, um, I was rewarded for doing things well, for performing, for performing, for getting good grades. And somehow in my childlike brain, I created this narrative that, oh, well, that must mean that's how I get my value, is by doing things well. And when I don't do things well, I see the sad face on a parent, or I get the criticism from a teacher, and I don't ever want to feel that way again. So I'm just going to really hustle to make sure I'm always doing things well. Well, that's a lot of pressure, and it did not help me in being able to, number one, take risks,
Yes.
and number two, handle my mistakes in a way where I didn't have a shame attack when I
Yes.
made a mistake. And this has been probably one of the most freeing practices for me, this practice of self-esteem, that my value and worth has nothing to do with my performance, with my achievements, with what I have, with how I look. All of those come and go, but it does not change. And from that position, I can work with myself through mistakes. I mean, talk about learning mistakes. I didn't go to school to be a businesswoman. I didn't go to school to be an entrepreneur. I went to school to be a therapist, and having to run a business and manage people and contracts with landlords and lawyers. And, there was a lot I didn't know, and some things I learned by my mistakes. And I would just come apart. I felt like, oh, I shouldn't even run a business. I can't believe I did that, have a shame attack. And now I work with myself very differently because of this practice.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying that. Congratulations on growing through that, right? That is all we can do, is trend in the right direction in life, in these areas of personal growth. And self-esteem
Mhm.
is a huge area of continual growth. I think also when social media became such a big thing in our world, thankfully I didn't grow up with it, AudrieAna. So therefore, I think I've am able to hold my inherent worth and value longer than maybe I would have had I grown up with it.
Yeah.
Because the constant comparison, the
Mhm.
constant viewing of someone else's life, even if you know you don't need to compare, that comparison is a thief of joy. We hear that. We've had guests tell us that already.
Mhm.
We know that it decreases value when you compare someone with inherent worth and value. I think just having the externals inform us more who we are, and our and oh, I have inherent worth and value, AudrieAna, because we got so many likes, or we got so many whatever, versus just, again, what you're saying is, this can't be taken from me. I have this, and I'm not looking to what others say or don't say. In fact, I can even be free enough to try some new things and be messy in it. And so I also think social media comparison makes it harder to appreciate our strengths, our
Mhm.
uniqueness. And I feel for some of the young people, and I applaud countries today that are banning social media. Now, good luck. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I saw like the UK is banning social media for under 18. And I was like, good
Wow.
luck, great, because it is impacting self-esteem, which
Mhm.
then impacts depression and anxiety. We know this.
Right.
So that is something that I catch myself with as an adult woman, but I wouldn't have wanted to grow up with it.
Right.
It would have
Yeah.
not helped form my self-esteem at all. It would have done
Right.
the opposite.
Right. Right. Oh, I so echo all of that. I think that you said something that's really resonates with me in the way I look at self-esteem and boundaries, which are two
Yes.
pieces of the same pillar that we're talking
Yes.
about, which is, um, living from your core is that external forces, right? If everything coming at us is what's going to hold us together, we are in trouble. We
Mm,
are in so much trouble. But what do we do when we're working with a personal trainer? What do we do after an injury and we're doing our rehab? And I think the reason I look at this so much through a comparison to the physical body is because I am a physical person. I grew up, playing sports and then dancing, all the way through college, and now I'm a runner and a spinning person and I lift weights. But I have had some injuries, right? You can't be, even a amateur athlete. You can't and not
yes.
have injuries, particularly when
Yes.
you're a knucklehead like me, and sometimes you overtrain. So I have had to rehab several things on this body. And so to me, the comparison, it's like in order to be able to move through life, in order to be able to do the things I love to do, running, lifting, spinning, dancing, I have to have a strong core. If I focus on my extremities, or if I focus on my brain and all, my smarts and like, oh, I'm going to train so smart, I'm going to do these things, but I
Yes.
don't have a strong core, I'm going to get injured. And the same is true in our mental, emotional, relational world that we, in order to move through our emotional, mental, relational fields, we have to have a strong core. If our well being and our self esteem is in other people's hands, if our self esteem is in the media's hands, in the
Yes.
movies' hands, in Hollywood's hands, in bad coaches or bad teachers out there, or friends, peers that don't have our best interest, if I put my self esteem in their hands, I am in serious trouble. So
Yes.
I have got to learn how to own my self esteem and have it be from a place that doesn't change. So I
Yes.
think that leads me to where are the ways that we try to earn our self-esteem. I just
Yes.
thought I'd talk about that a little bit about how do we, when we don't know how to have a strong core and live from a
Yes.
healthy self-esteem, where are the places that we are going to try to get it sometimes. Well, one is performance. I already talked about
Yes.
that. Performance-based self-esteem. I think that I have value and worth if I achieve a lot, if I work a lot, if I become a workaholic, if I look like I have it all together. I
Yes.
mentioned perfectionism, right? So that's one way that we try to earn our value. Another is attribute based, right? And this is what we have,
Mm.
how we look, my physical appearance, my age, right? And we feel like we have more worth if we own more things, have a bigger house, have a nicer car, um, have an amazing job with a lot of
Yes.
importance. It's like I have value because of that. But you and I know, Emily, we work with people where all of that's gone in a day. Someone
Absolutely.
loses a job, loses their money, um, gets injured and no longer has their physical appearance,
Mm.
and all of a sudden the self-esteem, it's a major self-esteem crisis because their identity was in that attribute.
Yes. Yes. Completely.
And then one that we don't think about as often
Yes.
is other-based self-esteem. And that's where I put
Mm.
and this was one that I really struggled with
Mm.
and still sometimes really struggle with, is I put my value is in how well I do for you
Mm.
or how well you like me. So people pleasing was always a
Yes.
real struggle for me. It was a survival strategy for me growing up. It was the way that I moved through the world was like, I'm going to be pleasant. I'm not going to be difficult. I'm not going to tell you how I really feel because I don't want to offend you and I want you to like me. And it's just not a way to live. I'm telling you, it's just not. I appreciate authenticity so much. And yet sometimes I really struggle with this. Um, so other based self-esteem, sometimes people put a lot of value in who they know. Oh, I know this person, or I know this famous person, or I get box seats here, or do whatever. And we get our value from who we know. And this is where codependence is so strong in families and in couples work when I'm working with couples, in that I have a self-esteem crisis if my partner does not approve of X, Y, and Z. That it
Yes.
doesn't become about that thing, it becomes literally a rejection of me. And I have a bad, self-esteem crisis because of that.
Yes.
Um, and then
Yeah.
another way we see it, lastly, I'll just mention grandiosity. People will say, when I'm teaching this concept, people say, well, people who are grandiose and arrogant and think they're better than, they don't have low self-esteem. They actually have too high a self-esteem. And that's not how I see it. That's not how Pia Melody sees it. This is all based on the work of Pia Melody, and she sees grandiosity as really just low self-esteem, someone who needs to puff themselves up
Yeah.
in order to feel good about themselves or put others down in
Yeah.
order to feel good about ourselves. So these are all the ways that we look to the outside
Yes.
to help us know who we are
Yeah.
instead of from the inside.
Yes, exactly. Instead of just holding this unconditional positive regard, this belief throughout a day, throughout a life, throughout a season of life that I have inherent worth and value because I'm here, right? And there's nothing I can do to earn more of it or lose more of it. And this is a powerful framework for living, and certainly something that changes you as you go through life, and as you change your thinking, as you change where your strength comes from internally, as you rewire some of these automatic defaults and unlearn what you've seen or what you saw in a generation prior to you. It's fascinating, to
Yeah.
to become stronger at your core. And I know you also had some research that you just found, AudrieAna, that really showed also the value of self-esteem as it paralleled to developing um, a bout of depression and a
Yeah.
bout of anxiety. So I'll let you
Yeah.
share that, but we were talking about that
Yeah.
earlier.
I think that this is what's really important is people think, oh, self-esteem work, that's just, that's self-actualization, that's
Totally.
puffy stuff, whatever. It's not, but no, this is gritty, real work. And I do want to say it is a practice because this changes over time, the things that we're dealing with in life that impact our self-esteem. So you have to practice, just like yoga. You fall over and you get back up. That's why yogis say this is not a performance or a class. This is a practice. We are practicing every time we put our mat on the floor. That's the same with self-esteem, but I want our audience to understand how important it is. Okay, so when I was doing research on this, um, and I found that based on a longitudinal study, of over 77 studies. So this is a meta-analysis of self-esteem and the correlation to depression. That low self-esteem is a well-established independent risk factor for depression. So what they found was that those with lower self-esteem were at higher risk to develop depression. And so that it makes you actually more vulnerable to depression than if you had a healthy self-esteem. So
Yes.
that's important. And it was just so many studies that were saying the same thing. They also listed that, if you have depression out there, that your practitioner, your therapist, your coach, whoever you're working with, needs to be addressing self-esteem. It says these findings suggest that directly targeting self-esteem in treatment of depression may serve both as a therapeutic strategy for current depression and a preventative intervention against future depressive episodes. So I think that sometimes we as practitioners forget to include self-esteem work when we're treating depression, and it is definitely a huge piece of it. There was also a study that was a meta-analysis of 18 longitudinal studies that found that there is a correlation between self-esteem and anxiety.
Mm.
Unlike depression, the relationship between self-esteem and anxiety is bidirectional. So
Okay.
it just means, what they mean by that is that these two, they mutually influence one another, but having healthy self-esteem or low self-esteem does not impact whether or not you'll have anxiety. They are just concurrent. So whereas low self-esteem made someone vulnerable for depression, with anxiety, they're saying it's a bidirectional thing, which just means that as my anxiety increases, my self-esteem may decrease. Like I may have more difficulty. And if I have normal healthy self-esteem and then I go through a crisis and I have low self-esteem, my anxiety might increase. So they're
Yes.
kind of bidirectional.
Mm.
And then the last
Fascinating.
one, Emily, I'll just mention that's super important is the correlation between self-esteem and suicidality. What the research found, particularly the ages they looked at with 12 and 20 through 12 years old through 26, which we know is a vulnerable age
Yes.
for suicidality. They said that low self-esteem is a well-established risk factor for suicidal ideation and suicide attempts, supported by both cross-sectional and longitudinal evidence across clinical and non-clinical populations. So, and that's very sobering because you may be someone out there that's lost someone from suicide. You may be somebody out there who struggles with suicidal thoughts. And so the encouragement here is, if you're working with someone, make sure that you're addressing self-esteem. And then for the rest of us out there, this shows the importance of developing this part of your core, of really, really working and making self-esteem a practice as you move through your life.
Yes. Yeah. I hear a lot of hope in what you're saying because our self-esteem can grow. We are not victims in life. We go through times where we have to truly acknowledge hardships. We acknowledge losses. We acknowledge, that our parents maybe didn't show up in certain ways for us, but as we do that, we move through that, and we actually can change our relationship with ourselves and grow in the ability to appreciate and respect ourselves and see our inherent worth and value. And especially as we go on through life, and many of us choose to have children or be close to a niece and a nephew, and you meet a child. And I do think it's a game changer, AudrieAna, because you're like, wow, this child, they kind of wake up all types of people around them, right? And it's because they have that inherent worth and value, and they allow us all to see it again. And so some of the most stoic, stiff human beings all of a sudden can start being playful, right? With a baby. And you're like, what just happened? And I love that because it's kind of a reminder of what we're talking about right now, that value and worth is within all of us. And certainly things have come at that at times, or the world has challenged that at times, but we can invest in our self-esteem so that it stays more steady, it stays more healthy. We're not trying to one up people. You talk a lot about that. That is when our self-esteem is not in a balanced position. We're trying to one up somebody, or we feel like we're less than someone. And drawing more awareness to when that occurs, and being able to not depend so much on others' opinion of us, but having that inside of us and building that over our lifetime. So I love that this is a passion of yours, and you are currently developing a core growth program around this pillar, number 10. So you're developing this, and this is going to be a coming attraction where students that want to continue to develop their own self-esteem practice
Mhm.
can invest in themselves in this way
Mhm.
and really learn to live from a much more whole and grounded place. And so we look forward to you releasing that in the right time. I know it's needed in the world. It is invaluable, really.
Yeah, it really is. I think that um, I had to work through a lot of grief when I really felt like I finally understood and embraced the self-esteem practice, thanks to Pia Melody, thanks to Healing Our Core Issues Institute. I have to give them props because that's where I got trained on relational trauma.
Yeah.
And so this work has, I'll tell people, apart from my faith, this work has radically changed my life. And we can't get into all of it in one podcast. There's so much more to it, but for me and for our clients, we have several of us who are trained in this modality here at our practice, and they are, nationwide. These people have, Healing Our Core Issues Institute has trained clinicians all across the country, and so if you are one that wants to work on this, whether you tune in to the core growth program and learn how to do the self-esteem practice and others that we're going to share with us either online, or if you want to find a provider that knows how to do this, or just talk to the therapist that you're working with now and make sure that you're addressing self-esteem on how to practice it, because you finally kind of figure it out, and then I become a grandparent, and now that brings up a whole bunch of new things for me,
Yes.
and then so life just continues to happen. I look at our parents who are now in their 80s and, you know, having to deal with physical issues and having loneliness and not being able to do and I see them having to struggle sometimes with feeling, oh, less valuable to society.
Yes.
And so this is a lifelong practice, everybody. And the other thing I would say is if you're a parent out there of a school age child, this is worth you learning, because you learning this will then transform the way you parent. And we've got a whole team here at Learn to Thrive that works with helping parents instill really good healthy self-esteem in their children. But it starts with you. We focus on our children, but it starts with us. We need to know how to do that first, and then we parent out of that.
Yes. Yes. This is huge what you're saying. You know, particularly if you have been a mom or dad out there and your child, does something really well when they're young. Okay, we all know they are their own person, but gosh, it's hard not to feel like we get some of the credit, right? For something that they did well when they're in
Right.
3 or 4 years old already. And then on the opposite side of that, when they mess up, when they make a poor choice, when they do something in an unkind way, or, you know, um, quit performing in a certain way, all these externals, to know that this is their story. And who am I going to be in this? This is not a reflection of me as a mother. And yet, also, I know that we all have blind spots, right? And we all need to keep learning how to love others well. So I kind of hold those both, but I think that does happen as a parent, where somehow your kids, you can unconsciously think their successes and their setbacks are reflective of you. And it's like,
Oh,
what? I
absolutely.
mean, and that's just a spiral. You talk about a shame spiral or a regret or a why didn't I? And that just, gets you stuck and out of the present, out of the, hey, today's a new day. Let's begin again, right? Let's
Right.
let's enjoy who we are again. And so I think parents, we can get stuck on that. So that your work and this work helps us to remain grounded and differentiated and able to offer that unconditional, positive, safe place that we want to give the young people in our lives.
Yeah, I think, wow, when you think about um, when a baby is born, I've shared this many times because this is what helps me when I'm having either a shame attack or I'm also looking down on someone else, frustrated. I'm having a poor view of somebody and I'm looking at either what they've done or something that annoys me, and I'm in my one-up position, which is a terrible place to be. I need to bring myself back to the same as position, to say I'm same as you, regardless of what helps me is I think about, wow, when a baby is born and they're in a hospital, right? They are precious. They have done nothing for this world yet but be born, right? They have not become an astronaut. They have not become a lawyer. They have not cured cancer. They've not
Totally.
become a teacher, right? They have done nothing. And as people, a people of faith would say, this is inherent worth because you're made in the image of God. People that aren't of faith, that come from a neutral position
Yeah.
on faith, would say, as a society, we value this newborn baby. And if something were to happen to this baby, we would take care of this baby, right? We don't believe in human trafficking. We don't believe in,
Yes.
right? There's so many things that as a society we say this life has value. And they've done nothing for the world. But then what do we do for the rest of our lives? We hustle and either try to earn our value or we live in fear of losing our value.
Mhm.
And so, as a parent, just, when you're frustrated with your kiddo, if you need to be reminded of how precious they are, regardless of what they've done, that if you can treat them with that kind of positive regard, that they have value just because they are, that means you're going to handle their mistakes differently. That means you're going to handle their discipline differently. That means you're going to handle their successes differently. Instead of teaching them that this is what makes them who they are, that they are who they are in spite of their successes or failures,
Yes.
right? That changes everything for me, is thinking about that baby at the hospital that was just born. We've taught on self-esteem. We've had a couple of different
Yes.
places where we've gone and
Yes.
done some part of this teaching. Now, just talking about it again, do you have any Thrivist thought? Do you have a Thrivist thought on what we've discussed, or any last
Yeah.
thought?
I really think the cultural scripts as a woman is huge because that can be another place that we gain our self-esteem
Mhm.
instead of just holding it. And when we spoke on that, how when you go through life, sometimes, especially when you have big milestones of um, graduations, marriages, births of children, there is kind of an automatic response from the generation you saw above or from what you saw as acceptable by men or women in your culture.
Mhm.
And that gave you your worth and value. Now, maybe no one said that to you, but that was the right and wrong way to do it, right? And so I just think, again, that's worth wrestling with through life as we're
Mhm.
on this authentic journey and as we are unlearning people pleasing as women, as a culture. I think that's something many women can identify with from earlier. And so as we're unlearning that cultural default, cultural script that I didn't even know. What was that? And do I like that? Or am I really able to live for my unique worth and value? So that's
Yeah.
what has come up for me as I'm listening to you
Mhm.
share this again.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. That cultural scripts is a big one, and I guess that brings me to my Thrivist thought, in that I had the blessing to raise three boys, and so I always was, before I had the three boys, I was definitely more focused on women and how women needed to change their relationship in the workplace and things like that. But now, having three boys who are now all adults, I think I have a place in my heart for men, and for men to develop healthy self-esteem. And it's really, really important for men, and men and women and genders do this differently.
Yes.
because of cultural scripts, because of what the culture tells us you need to be in order to have value in society. And that is going to be different for every country as well. We've got, cultural differences here. So I think my heart for men is men earn their value through work, through production, through protection, through being stoic, through being less emotional. And I want to break through all of that for men. I want our boys
Yes.
our young men now to know that they have value regardless of the work they do, regardless of what they produce, regardless of how big and strong they are, regardless of if they feel vulnerable and if they're having lots of emotions, that their value is unchanged, and then they can move through life from that core. So that's my
Yes.
Thrivist thought.
Yeah, I love that. And I love being on that mission with you because, yes, I mean, we need men in this world with brave hearts and who are able, we know, to put a vulnerable heart out there. And that evolves themselves, their families, and our world in a great way. So I'm with you in that challenge.
Thanks for joining us at Thrivist, where talk transforms and builds resilience in an unpredictable world.